Oh wait, hold that pose. So original. Don't worry, Max. I'll put a vintage filter on it right before I post it all over social medias. Now, why don't you go f*** your selfie?
With technology increasing almost yearly, selfie culture has never been more popular as it is today. Sure, people were taking self-portraits before the first camera was invented, but with the help of the introduction of front-facing camera phones back in 2010, snapping a quick portrait of you and your friend has never been easier.
Seriously though, I could frame any one of you in a dark corner and capture you in a moment of desperation. Shh. I believe Max has taken what you kids call a selfie.
We all kind of used to laugh at the term selfie when it was first introduced, but the phrase has pretty much become a cultural norm, so much to the fact that it's even wound up in the Oxford Dictionary. The act of snapping a selfie and immobilizing yourself within that moment is such an ongoing trend right now. It's such an intrinsic part of our culture for a number of different reasons. As humans, we're by nature social creatures. Because of this, it's no real surprise that eventually such a phenomenon would wind up being translated into video games. There's an increasing number of video games to have come out in the last couple of years which showcase a photo mode or selfie mode. Even games that previously had no photo modes are getting remastered and including this update as a brand new feature. A lot of the times, these photo modes were not overly pertinent to the story. While in some games, the camera is used as a tool to progress through the game's story, in other games, it's simply implemented for just novelty reasons. The earliest example I can think of where devs wanted to appeal to their audiences was with the HD remaster of The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. In the original GameCube version, you have the option to use your camera, also known as a pictobox, to take photographs of landscapes and objects and store them all in an album as part of challenges or missions within the game. But you never had the option of being able to turn this camera around on yourself. As the selfie trend began to pick up around 2009 to 2010, in the HD remaster of Wind Waker, released in 2013, players finally had the option of using the pictobox to take their own selfie portraits. With this new added feature, you had the ability to change the expressions of Link and use your camera to snap funny selfies and photobombs for your own entertainment. The camera itself definitely had some functionality within the game, as it was a reoccurring object that you'd need to use in order to complete different missions, but you also had this newfound freedom to use the camera at your own leisure. I know a lot of people who would spend countless hours using the pictobox just for their own personal enjoyment. And with the game's re-release on the Wii U, it made it that much easier for you to share your snapshots with others online. This photo sharing feature is something devs at the time knew people would have a lot of fun with. Just like the original Wind Waker, before this casual and novelty use of cameras in games, back then, cameras were most commonly used as a tool that would aid in a game's story progression, rather than just being a neat additional feature that the player could mess around with. Unless the game was centered primarily around snapping photographs like we see in games like Pokemon Snap, cameras were more commonly used in horror, mystery, and stealth games. As the camera's main function was for clue gathering or collecting evidence, we see camera tools incorporated in many games under those genres like Sly Cooper, LA Noire, and even Barbie Detective. So how did we suddenly go from using cameras in games for the purpose of collecting evidence and storing information to solve missions, to using it to capture cool and candid moments of our favorite characters? And why are we seeing so many games pop up that are promoting this camera feature as a novelty addition to the games? Well, the explanation for this phenomenon in games actually has a pretty logical answer. Games, in some way or another, have a tendency to follow along with our own cultural shift. As technology progresses, it allows for us to share content at a much quicker rate, and to more people than we were once able to, say, 10 years ago. Existing in the modern social climate, one-click sharing has never been easier. It's one thing to snap photos in your game, but unless you're running it off of a console with a sharing feature, the potential of images reaching a wider audience and being enjoyed by the masses back then was pretty slim. When the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Wii U came around and introduced the screenshot feature and the ability to share your content online, it made this social network of sharing that much easier. You could finally snap a picture of your favorite landscape or funny photobomb and not only share it with your close circle of friends, but also with people online. However, eventually a lot of people would come to realize that this sharing was mainly limited to console gamers. While sharing images through a console had somewhat of a wide impact, I would argue that this method of selfie sharing only really went full force and into the mainstream with the launching of the Steam community in 2007. With Steam being a PC platform, photos and communities had a lot more interconnectivity. You weren't bound to a console this time or cross-platform limitations, but instead all you needed was a decent internet connection and you could easily use Steam as a hub for sharing funny selfies of your favorite games. This was increasingly popular in games like Garry's Mod and Team Fortress 2. You had the option of taking photos and sharing it with friends or posting it to a public gallery that was designated for that specific game, and users had the option of rating the photos and commenting on them, which created an even greater level of social connectivity. Like selfies in real life, we want to share our photo creations and get that little bit of praise. We want to put funny filters on stuff and even capture a funny moment during a match with our friends. And most of all, we want to tell a story to the rest of the world. Along with the Steam community, Team Fortress 2 was also launched in 2007, 2 years before the real-life selfie boom would take off with the introduction of the front-facing camera phones. This is also a time when social media was flourishing from being just more of a niche, and the MySpace era was coming to an end and platforms like Facebook and Twitter were becoming more widely used. So it all sort of aligned perfectly, and this transition from real-life selfies to in-game selfies started to make a lot more sense. As I mentioned earlier, companies not only noticed this trend and implemented selfie features like we saw with Wind Waker, but they were also paying attention to what was becoming popular with their fans. A lot of games that implemented photo modes in later releases were usually done as a response to a large amount of their fan base tinkering with in-game cameras and creating their own entertainment and communities from it. Just saying this, I'm reminded of the Smash community and how many of their fans would tinker with the camera modes in their earlier games. Even though Smash was intended to be a crossover fighting game, fans would use the camera feature to create their own stories, take funny snapshots and selfies, and even make their own machinimas, which had evolved to become quite popular on video sharing platforms like YouTube. Players of the game had created a new function for the camera mode, and I'm sure Nintendo hadn't anticipated how far fans would take this creativity when the feature was first introduced to Melee. People have even found ways to manipulate the camera in the game Overwatch. Although D.Va is considered to be a character heavily encroached in pop culture and social media, the game itself has no real focus on any sort of photo modes or selfie mechanics. The only real mention of selfie culture is that it's just part of D.Va's character. But even in this fast-paced first-person shooter, fans were able to find ways of manipulating the in-game camera for their own personal bit of entertainment. In the game's Halloween mode, boss players are given cinematic entrances, and during the camera's zoom-in, when timed correctly, during this sequence, players can create some really funny photobombs. These funny photobombs are recorded, shared to social media, and hilarity ensues. Seriously, something like the Reaper taking a foot to the face during his cinematic entrance really adds a lot more hilarity to the fictional Overwatch universe. Some games have even taken this concept and pushed it a step further. For example, the selfie plays a crucial role in the game Life is Strange. It not only touches on this global craze among young adults through its heavy use of social commentary, but it also explores the deeper meanings behind a self-portrait and capturing one in the moment, revealing character self-discovery, connecting lost memories through singular images, and even delving into themes much more sinister. Overall, capturing a selfie in a game can do so much more than its original intended purpose. Selfies can capture a cherished moment in time, birth a whole new story, or even create a meme if it's shared and loved by enough people. Every snapshot naturally tells its own story, and being able to add your own unique twist to a game just through a picture alone and share this with hundreds of thousands of people online can be really exciting. Not only do we further our storytelling and world building through the use of in-game cameras, but when characters partake in social trends like selfie culture, it results in those same characters feeling more human. This integration of our own culture within games helps to further personify these fictional characters, which overall creates a deeper level of immersion. And that is just so mind-blowing to know that we can take these cultural occurrences in our everyday life and apply it to games to make it all that more relatable and bring us closer to that form of said media. So the next time you take an in-game selfie, remember the young teens of the MySpace era, the pioneers of the selfie, who endured constant public ridicule just for your right to party. Let's take a moment to remember our fallen heroes.
In the eye arms of the angel fly.
Oh. I got the tape off. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe and click the little bell to be updated with all my content. I tend to do a lot of video game essays and content on 90s and early 2000s nostalgia. So if you like that stuff, then subscribe. We're trying to get to 50K before May. I'm Bob Dunga and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!